reminders. We talked about all these things last week. I'm going to ask 3 more people real quickly. Yes, you. The which one? Okay. Gunnar, did you have one? Yes? Okay, there's a shark up there. Bailey?
The jellyfish.
Okay, a jellyfish. And there's a lot more up there. Last week we learned there were 30,000 different sea creatures. And we don't have time to talk about all of those, but those were some of them. All right, then we also talked about these 4 birds last week. Who can tell me what is the name of the bird, and then what kind of beak do they have, and why did God give them that beak? All right, so I'm looking for somebody who has an answer yet. Guys, you have to talk really loud because I can't hear you. Okay, the hummingbird. What kind of a beak does it have? All right, why does it have a long, skinny beak? Okay, because it's going to suck the nectar out of flowers. Good job. Georgia, did you have one? Yes.
The eagle, and it has the pointy beak so it can rip meat.
Good, very good job. All right, Kaylee. Blue jay, yep.
And so it has a small beak so it can rip the seeds out of potatoes.
Okay, good. And it's a really hard beak so it can crack the seeds in the nuts. Good. Do you know the last one? That would be this one right here. Yes. Well, it's a pelican. Can you tell me what kind of beak it has? It has a really big pouch. Why does it need a really big pouch, Tucker?
Because it's gonna dive and eat fish.
All right, it's going to dive down in the water and it's able to scoop up all kinds of water as well as the fish, right? So good, really good job. All right, then, we talked about birds' bones 2 weeks ago. Can you tell me what are birds' bones really like? Does anybody remember? Tucker.
Like white.
Oh, they aren't light particularly, but they are full of what? Maybe this will help you. Do you remember? I always thought they were light, and that's why they're light so they can fly. But when I did research, it says that birds' bones actually aren't light, but the birds' bones are at the top, and the birds' bones are not solid like human bones down at the bottom, but they're full of air pockets because the birds need more air in order to be able to fly. So that was some of the things that we learned about the birds' bones. And then, how did God create everything that we've talked about so far? How did that happen? All right, God, the Bible says he spoke, and just like that, whatever he was creating appeared. Good job. All right, now, none of these things that we've talked about so far were an accident. They were all God's plan, and God has been working according to his plan. And we've already said several times that God created things in a certain order. He didn't create plants before he made the land, but he started with light, and then he started with making the sky, and then the land and the plants, the sun and the stars, the birds and the fish, and now we see that the air is full of birds, and the water is full of fish, and now we're ready to see what God is going to do next. So we've been looking in Genesis chapter 1, and here we're going to find out what God is going to create next. Genesis 1, verse 24, and we have it right up here. Can you read it with me? It says, "And God said, let the earth bring forth a living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so." Good. God was now ready to fill the earth with all kinds of animals. Not just ones in the sky and in the water, but now ones that would be on the land. And so one thing that he created, we might call them farm animals. And so I need 3 people to tell me a farm animal. And of course, Tucker, you have to tell us because you live on a farm. What would be one animal you would find on a farm?
Goats.
Okay, goats. All right, how about you? Chickens. Yeah, you might find chickens on a farm. Yes. Horses, good. And you can see there's a lot more other options up there because God made a lot of animals that we might think about being on the farm. But then there's also what we might call wild animals. I need 4 people to tell me about some wild animals that you might think of.
Lion.
A lion, good. All right, Eliana? Which one? Elephants, good. Kaylee?
The ostrich.
Ostrich, okay. How's another one go? Can you see any up there? Which one?
Longhorn.
Okay, is there a longhorn? Well, like a wildebeest maybe, or no, what the other one? Oh, there's another one. Okay.
I think it's
Well, there are some antelope that would have longhorns in there as well. All right, and you can see there's a lot of other options up there too. You guys even have some pets that are dogs or cats or maybe hamsters. I don't know what else you might have as pets. But you know what else? God also made some of these things on the 6th day. Tucker, what do you see up there?
Scorpions.
Okay, yes, scorpions. How did I know the boys would find the scorpion up there? Yes, Landon, give us something else.
Spider.
Spiders, yes. Yep. Snake. Yeah, Easton, do you have one? Worms. What's that big thing over there? Does anybody know what that is? Kaylee?
Not exactly what that one is, but I saw a mantis yesterday.
Okay, a praying mantis. Somebody who had the grasshopper earlier today. Oh yeah, that was you, wasn't it? All right, then we have the lizards up there. We have all kinds of snakes and snails. And again, there's many, many, many different things that God would have made on the 6th day. But we want you to just see a few of those things. That not only did God make each one of these things, but he also made them to reproduce or to give birth to animals that were similar to their mothers and fathers. Now, you've seen this picture over here before, because we've talked about that with evolution. And evolution does not say that the horse came a long time ago. No, evolution says it started with this animal down here. And over millions of years, it began to change until it developed into the next animal. And another millions of years went by, and then we got the next animal, and it just keeps going like that until eventually we got the horse. But that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says that God created everything after its own kind. So that means that God created the horse, and ever since then, the horse has been giving birth. And what does a horse have? A baby horse called a what? A foal, right?
Yeah.
That's what a baby horse is called. And so it hasn't changed. In thousands of years, that's the way it has been working. Now, God is an amazing creator, and he has given animals special eyes, special noses, special ears, special mouth, special, we might call them limbs or paws or legs, all according to how they're going to live in the environment that they're going to be in. And we could talk tonight about, so many examples of amazing animals. I was even reading earlier today about the horse. Do you know that a long time ago people saw the horse's leg and they said, oh, that is not a good design. That horse is going to break its leg all the time because it has a place underneath its knee where there's like a little hole. And they said, that's really bad. Why is there a hole there? It needs to have a strong bone right there. And they thought that that was a failure in the horse. But now scientists have found out that's not a failure at all. After they've done more research, they've actually realized that it is one of the most amazing things. And do you know that there are engineers, people that build stuff, that are now looking at the horse's leg as a design and going to copy it for other things? Isn't that amazing? God made the horse just like that. And now scientists, engineers, people are just finding that out. And we could talk about a lot of different animals, but tonight I want to talk about 2 different animals that I also found were really fun and I thought you might enjoy. The first one is the what? Giraffe. Yes, look at that giraffe. I always think the giraffe is kind of fun to look at because it's just really different. I've ever been to the zoo and saw the giraffe trying to eat and walk and run and stuff like that. But the giraffe is actually an example of a just amazing example of God's design. And let me show you how. This giraffe has a heart that weighs 25 pounds. Now, most human hearts, I think, are I forgot to look it up, but I think it's somewhere around maybe 3 to 5 pounds. Our hearts are really not that big. But why does the giraffe need such a big heart? Well, let me show you in this picture right here. You see where the giraffe's heart is? Right here? And you see that really super long neck? Its brain is not until way up in its head. So it needs this really big heart in order to be able to pump all the blood up into the brain and then be able to send it back to the heart. Now, that sounds pretty simple, right? Except when the giraffe gets ready to bend over to get a drink or something like that. Now it's got all this blood in its neck and in its brain, and it's going to rush down there. And now, if the pressure isn't just right, the giraffe's head will just explode. But you know what? I know you think that's funny. Wouldn't that be funny to see? It would kind of, wouldn't it? Except that there are special valves that are in the giraffe's neck. And those valves can cut off the blood supply and control the blood. And then, do you see this little kind of big thing that's red right there? That is like a sponge. And that sponge, you know, like when you have a sponge, you can put lots of water on it, right? And then what do you do when it's full of water? You squeeze it, don't you? And all the water comes out. Well, that's exactly what this does. You see, when the giraffe has its head high, it's full of blood, okay? Or no, I think it's dry at that point. And when it goes down, it fills up with blood so that the giraffe's neck doesn't explode. Now, if you think about that, do you think that is just an accident that it happened that way? No, I don't think so either. There's even something else amazing about this giraffe. Its lungs. Its lungs are also really huge. And the reason, because that long neck, they have to have lots of air to be able to send all the way up to where its nose is, and then all the way back down. And so its heart and its lungs are extra big, and yet God has made these so that they will be able to work just like it's supposed to. Now, I have to tell you a little thing. People that believe in evolution would tell you that the giraffe did not always look like this. It used to have a very short neck. And as time went on, it found that all the leaves at the top of the tree were sweeter and they were better. And so it wanted the ones at the very top of the tree. So what do you do when something's at the top and you only are this tall? Well, you could climb, but I don't think a giraffe could probably climb. But it might. But probably it just started stretching, right? And it started stretching, and it started stretching, and it started stretching. And this is what evolutionists will tell you, that over time they stretched out that neck until it got long like that. Now, and then it just started growing like that all the time. Now, if that were true, would all these things that we talked about with its heart already be in place? Because if it had a short neck, it wouldn't need those valves. It wouldn't need that little sponge, would it? But God made this, and he had a design, and he made it exactly like he wanted it to be. Now, if you were here on Sunday, we also heard Pastor Steve talking about an animal, and that was the camel. The camel is also really an amazing example of God's design, because God has just put every part of this camel, made it so that it's really ready to live in the desert. We mentioned on Sunday that the camel's humps, a lot of times we think of those humps as being full of water, but they're not actually full of water. They're full of fat, and that fat is like energy for the camel. So when it goes a long time without food or water, it can go to that kind of like as its store of energy, and it can survive for a while without food or water. We also talked about the camel's feet. The camel does not have little tiny feet, because if it did, it would sink way down into the sand. But instead, God gave that camel really wide feet so that it would be able to move better in the desert. And tonight in our labs, we're going to talk a little bit about feet and some of the animals that God has made especially to have special feet. And then you can see down here, here's the camel. We talked about his eyelashes. Do you see those big, long eyelashes? It has lots of eyelashes. And those eyelashes are especially designed so when the sandstorms come, he can close those and not get sand in its eyes. Same thing with his nose. Do you know that the camel can actually close his nose all by himself? Because when the sand comes, he needs to be able to keep the sand from going down his lungs. So there's a lot of things about the camel that would show us that God is a great designer. And those are just a couple of things about those animals. Now, not only did God make animals that lived on the land on the sixth day, but he was also now ready to make something else. And that was the first people. And so here again, we're going to read in Genesis. Read with me from Genesis 1:26. And it says, "And God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness." Good. So this was God talking, and he was ready to make man. And there was something really special about man that he was going to make that was not like any of the other things that he made. First of all, this verse tells us that God was going to make them after his image. Now, if you make something after an image, that means it's going to be like the original, okay? So that would mean that man would look like God. Now, God doesn't have a body like we do, so we don't look like God as far as our physical bodies. But God made us like him in this way. He gave us a personality. And a personality is just what makes you, you. Some of you are very caring and loving people. Some of you are maybe grumpy. Some of you might be really happy all the time. Some of you might be very sad. Or maybe you're even fearful. All right? God has made many people all different kinds of ways. But there are certain characteristics that are just like God, and there are certain characteristics that God has given to us that make us our own personality. Not only has God given us that, but he also gave us a what? A mind. Some of you are getting ready to go to school. Actually, all of us are getting ready to go to school, right, in a few weeks. And you're going to have to learn math facts, and you're going to have to learn stuff about history, and stuff about science. Have you ever seen a dog go to school, though? Yeah. Now, I know on TV, there's lots of animals that talk and are really smart and learn stuff. But I have to tell you, I've never seen a cat or a dog be able to tell you what 2 times 2 is. Have you? No, I haven't either. And that's because God gave human beings a mind to think and to learn. But animals don't really have the same kind of mind that we do. And another thing that God made is God made us with a will, which is the idea that we can choose to obey or we can choose to disobey. And so those are just a few of the things that God made us as human beings with. Now, evolution will tell you, oh, human beings are just, they're like more intelligent and they're more evolved than animals are. But that's not true. God made us with a personality, a mind, and a will, and he made us something else. We were made to know God. We were made to love God. And animals were not made to do those things. There's something else special about people as well. Everything else, when God was ready to create it, he said with his mouth, let there be light, and what happened? There was light. So he spoke and everything happened. But that's not what happened with man. And I thought this was a pretty cool picture. Can you see what's in that picture?
Sand. A man.
It's dirt, but do you see the man that's there? And that's to remind us that God didn't just speak this time when he wanted to create man. Instead, we're going to look at this verse. It says, the Lord God formed man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. And that's exactly what God did. God took some of the dust or the dirt that were on the ground and he formed it, something like maybe you might do with Play-Doh or clay, and he made it into a man. And here might be a semblance of what the first man would have looked like. He looks like he's just coming to life there after God breathed into him. And this was the first man. And what was the first man's name? Anybody remember? Adam, you're right. Adam was his name. And he was different from the animals because God had given him life, so he had a soul. He had that personality. He had a mind to think. He had a will to be able to decide to obey or not. And then God gave Adam some special responsibilities. God gave him the responsibilities of caring for the animals and caring for the earth. And he also was able to name all the animals. And as he was looking at all the animals and everything, do you see him over there? He's really sad. Do you know why he's sad? Because he sees all the others animals. They have a male animal and they have a female animal. They kind of have a partner. And Adam says, I don't have a partner. And so God saw that and he said, oh, here, let's make a woman to go along with the man. And so the Bible tells us, and we'll just talk about it really quickly, but God made Adam go into a deep sleep, and then he took one of his ribs and he made the woman from that rib. And we know the woman's name was Eve, don't we? And so those were different than the way he made any of the other animals. All right, Adam and Eve were very special to him, and because they were made in God's image. And now, creation is all done. The next verse in Genesis tells us that God saw everything that he had made. He looked at all the things that he had done. And what did he say? It was very good. All the other times he always just said, oh, it was good. But this time he said, oh, it was very good. He was very pleased with everything he had done because it was just the way he wanted. And then the very last thing in Genesis 1 tells us that on the seventh day, we've been talking about the sixth day, but on the seventh day, the Bible tells us that God rested. Now, God didn't rest because he was so tired because of all the work he had done, but he was finished with his work. So he had completed everything he was wanted to do, and so now he could stop. So the Bible tells us that he rested. And these were the things that God has made every single day of creation. We've talked about day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6 tonight. And then day 7 is that God rested. And I hope that you've seen all the time, every week as you've come, that these things were not made by accident, but they were made by a designer, a wonderful designer. And that designer and creator was God, and not just by an accident.
Okay, so today we're here in our lab experiment for day number 6. And we talked about in our lesson that God created land animals and also people. So we're going to do a few different experiments with thinking about some animals and also how God has created us, people, in a very special way. So our experiment today is a little unusual, but we really want to talk about how God made special animals that were in the Arctic, those in the really cold region, or also even this goes for those that are in the desert regions. Those in the cold, they have to walk on top of the snow and not fall in and like sink inside the snow. Same thing with those in the desert as they walk on the sand. So our experiment today goes along with a really important scientific principle called PSI, which stands for pounds per square inch. So the idea is if you put all your weight on just a very tiny little place, then all your weight is on that small part, and so it will sink farther into either snow or dirt or sand of some sort or another. But if you have a larger area and you can spread the weight out, then you won't sink in as much. So today for our experiment, we're using flour. which is supposed to represent our snow for the Arctic. And then these are not Arctic animals, but we couldn't find any Arctic animals, so we're just using these animals. But the idea is just thinking about their hooves and thinking about the size of their hooves and their weight and how they would sink into the snow. So maybe we can try our first. We're going to start with a larger animal here, and we're going to just gently place it inside the flour or inside our snow and see what happens. Now you can take it out and let's see how far did it go inside. And you can see it went in quite a ways, especially those front hooves really went inside our fake snow, if you want to call it. So over here, we have actually made some little, these are supposed to kind of represent snowshoes, but they would represent the fact that Arctic animals and animals that travel in the sand, like the camel, would not have such small hooves, but they would have bigger hooves. So we want to try, we're going to try kind of a smaller one at first and see if we were to stick this on here and make, it's like we're sort of making snowshoes for the animal, but it's really just that God designed those animals in the Arctic and in the desert with a larger hooves on the bottom. So yes, and you can just use this, and we're just gonna, so we don't pack our flour down. All right, so now you try it again. Again, just place it in there and let's see what happens. So it went in a little bit, and I want you to just see, can you press it down a little bit? If you try to put a little pressure on it, what happens? All right, now lift it out and let's see what happens. Go ahead and lift the animal out. And you can see, again, it went in a little bit, but not a great amount, right? Maybe not as much as before. All right, so you want to try to smooth out your flour again, and we're going to try this with different size. Now, I've actually got a small here, and I've got a medium, and I've got a large. We're just going to skip to the large one just because of time, but you can make different sizes, and there's 3 different sizes that you can try. Okay, all right. Oops, that one doesn't want to stick on there very well, does it? All right, see, I'm gonna help you a little bit. All right, so now, like with the same pressure that you sort of pushed a little bit on the last one, try the same. Don't do it any harder, but don't do it any softer either. All right, and now take that off. And you can see this time, even with her pushing down a little bit, it hardly sunk into the flour or our fake snow at all. So this is just to represent a little bit about God's design for the animals that are in the Arctic or in the sand in the desert, that they would have larger hooves, spread out hooves, in order to help them so they don't sink down. I just want to show you just really quickly, if you look at the hooves on this zebra, and then you look at the hooves of this deer, you can see there's quite a bit of difference. And I just want you to see, when we put this one inside the flour, what happens to it. Do you remember what happened when we put the zebra in? It sank down, but look at the deer. If we take it out, oh, it really sank down. And so if we would just quickly try to help it with some snowshoes here, the deer definitely would not make it very well in the snow, would it? He would just continue to sink down farther and farther. And the research that I did showed that people have actually studied these Arctic animals, and they try to replicate the things that God has already given to them. Oops, I don't think we got them very well. After they get the flour on them, they don't stay in there very well. All right, and then again, if we try to press it down a little bit, you'll see when we take them off, they really didn't go in there too much, did they? Kind of messed our flour up a little bit, but you can see they didn't sink down like they did the first time. So again, this is just an evidence of how God has given those animals in the Arctic and those animals in the desert special feet in order to be able to survive and not sink down into the sand or into the snow. Again, was that an accident? No, that was a design that God made because He is a great creator and designer. Okay, here's our next experiment. Not only did God make animals on day number 6, but He also made people. And God made a wonderful design with people as well. So what we're going to talk about today is just the wonderful design that God has made with our hand. The fact that our hand can actually move and bend, and it does whatever we want it to do. So in our class, we're going to start with this hand. We've cut out our hand template, and then we've glued our straws on already to try to make it a little faster in our class. And then we've glued our string. You will want to go ahead and fish the string all the way through the straws so that it ends up looking like this. All right, and then this is supposed to represent our hand. The straws are supposed to represent the bones that are in our hand. And then our string represents like the tendons or the muscles that are there. And so then you can just have a lot of fun playing with, you can pull the different strings, or turn it this way so everybody can see. You can pull one string and have just one finger working. Maybe this finger here, we'll try to make that one work. Yeah, there you go. You can pull all of the strings, actually like you were trying to grab something and hold it in your hand. Are you getting all of them? There you go. You can try to come up with creative ways that you might use your hand. You can say, I love you, and the sign for that. If you do that with your hands, yeah. You can try to have people come to you if you want. So a lot of different, if you maybe make your hand come this way, and then how would you say come? Usually you bring your fingers, something like that. Yeah. All right, so you can make them sort of come like that. So you can just have fun with your kids and help them to be able to experiment and just show God's design is wonderful, that our hands move because our brain tells them to do it, and that's the way God has made them. And so we can grasp things, we can use them in so many different ways. So I hope you enjoy and have fun with these experiments.